The Convair B-58 Hustler was the world's first Mach 2 bomber. It was incredibly fast. But pilots didn't trust it. The aircraft required constant attention. Takeoffs were risky, landings were worse. Even experienced crews struggled with its narrow flight margins. Interesting fact, nearly 1 out of every 4 aircraft was lost in accidents during service. Many pilots respected its speed, but feared flying it. The Heinkel He 177 looked like Germany's answer to Allied heavy bombers. But pilots gave it a terrifying nickname, the Flying Lighter. Its engines were paired together into unusual power units. That design caused overheating. Fires started mid-flight, sometimes during takeoff, sometimes over enemy territory. Crews often feared their own aircraft more than enemy fighters. Interesting fact, some pilots refused missions unless engine modifications were completed first. It became one of the most dangerous bombers Germany ever produced. The Boeing B-47 Stratojet introduced the modern jet bomber design. But early jet technology came with risks. The aircraft had fragile landing gear. It stalled unexpectedly, and sometimes entered unrecoverable spins. Interesting fact, hundreds were lost in accidents during the Cold War. Pilots admired its performance, but feared its unpredictability. The Douglas TBD Devastator entered World War II already obsolete. It was slow, poorly armed, and lightly protected. During the Battle of Midway, many crews flew knowing survival chances were extremely low. Interesting fact, not a single Devastator torpedo squadron scored a hit during that battle. Yet their sacrifice helped win the war. The Heinkel He 111 was effective early in World War II. But later it became vulnerable. It lacked defensive guns, it lacked speed, and Allied fighters easily intercepted it. Interesting fact, pilots later called missions escort-dependent survival flights. Without fighter cover, survival chances dropped sharply. The Tupolev Tu-22 looked futuristic, but pilots struggled to fly it safely. Landing speeds were extremely high. Cockpit visibility was poor, and emergency escape systems were dangerous. Interesting fact, crew ejection required pilots to eject downward at high altitude only. At low altitude, escape was nearly impossible. The Boeing B-52 Stratofortress later became legendary, but early versions were challenging. Systems were complex, electronics unreliable, and maintenance demanding. Interesting fact, early crews flew aircraft still being upgraded during active service missions. Despite that, it became history's longest-serving bomber. The Avro Manchester suffered from unreliable engines. Failures happened frequently, sometimes during missions, sometimes before takeoff ended. Interesting fact, its problems were so serious that Britain replaced it quickly. Its replacement? The legendary Avro Lancaster. The Martin B-26 Marauder earned a dangerous nickname early in service, the Widowmaker. Its wings were small, landing speeds were high, training accidents were common. Interesting fact, later upgrades made it one of the safest bombers in World War II, but early crews paid the price. The Handley Page Hampton had one of the narrowest fuselages ever built. Crew space was extremely tight. Movement inside the aircraft was difficult, and defensive weapons were limited. Interesting fact, pilots called it the flying suitcase because survival inside felt cramped and exposed. Behind every bomber we talked about today, there is something easy to forget. These aircraft were not just machines. They were experiments in speed, power, and strategy, built during times when aviation technology was still changing faster than engineers could fully understand it. Some designs pushed limits too far, some entered service too early, and some simply asked too much from the pilots flying them. In many cases, these aircraft were not hated because they were useless. They were hated because they were unforgiving. A small mistake could become a serious emergency. A minor system failure could turn into a life-threatening situation. And sometimes, crews had to trust aircraft that even engineers knew were not fully ready yet. But something important happened because of these bombers. Every weakness engineers discovered, every accident investigators studied, and every difficult mission pilots survived, helped shape the safer, smarter aircraft that followed. Modern bombers did not appear overnight. They were built on lessons learned the hard way, lessons written by pilots who flew the most challenging aircraft of their time. So while these bombers earned difficult reputations, they also helped build the future of aviation, because progress in flight has never come without risk. And history has always been carried forward by the people brave enough to take that risk. Thanks for watching.